right, well, thank you very much. Yeah, and I want to thank Maria and Anna. She walked away somewhere, but thank you for inviting me because I'm not a PhD and I have 0 publications, just to let you know. So when they talk about other science, I just apply it based on their models. I don't even know how to run their models sometimes, but somebody else will do that. So this is how I do it. So it's a case study of Phoenix. What's Phoenix doing? I'll just give you a history, a little bit, not a history, but the conditions of Phoenix. Phoenix has 1.5 million people, so we're very big. We have 520 square miles, so it's a huge city. It's hot. It's over 100 degrees Fahrenheit, and I wish I could hear the conversion to Celsius, but I don't have my thing in. But it's hot, 110 days a year. So from May to September, it's over 100 degrees, and 100 is not bad, really. Anything over 110 gets a little rough, but 100, yeah, I can handle 100. It's gotten, every decade, the temperatures increase about 0.9 degrees Fahrenheit or 0.5 degrees Celsius. So it's getting hotter every year. We just did an inventory of our trees and our infrastructure. We have 41% of our area, which is hundreds of square miles, it's paved, either paved, buildings, roads, parking lots. That's 40%. It's pretty amazing when you think about all that concrete and asphalt. We also have 7,000 miles of water pipes and 5,000 miles of sewer pipes. So we have a really good infrastructure. We also have, unlike Tucson, we do have a separate stormwater system. So we have pipes when it rains, it goes into the piping, not into our sewer pipe, but into our storm drain, and then gets discharged out into our Salt River, which when I moved out there in 95 and my wife didn't want to come out west because she said it was too dry. I said, there's a Salt River right through the middle of Phoenix. It's great. And we were driving over that Salt River, and all we saw was boulders in that river. That was pretty rough realization that we are moving to the desert. So, stormwater and air quality. What's the driver in Phoenix, or in the USA? The EPA. The EPA has regulations, and they regulate stormwater. And then they have been the driver for green infrastructure. They regulate it. They're saying, hey, that's the best way to regulate stormwater, is through green infrastructure. Now, air quality is also regulated by EPA, but they don't necessarily they don't recognize the benefit necessarily of trees and the green infrastructure. I mean, they're aware of it, but it's really, they're not mandating it. They're not putting it in your permit. So that's something that we're trying to work on to get a holistic approach that it doesn't only help stormwater, but it also helps with air pollution. All right. So a lot of my slides have been completely and totally talked about yesterday and today. So I'm going to go through a lot of them pretty quickly. But in general, what we're trying to do with green infrastructure is Phoenix is going to grow about, they're going to double by 2050. So right now we have 1.5 million people. We think in the next 35 years we're going to increase our population by over 1 million people. If you think about that, we can't have 1 million more cars on the road. We can't have all that more asphalt and concrete. So what we're trying to do is encourage infill. When I look at, I'm on the 14th floor in City Hall, and I look out even downtown Phoenix, we have vacant lots all over the place. So we're very spread out. We're not vertical, we are spread laterally. So the goal would be to use the existing 7,000 miles of piping and roads and sewer lines and have people move into these infills and develop those. So the goal for Phoenix would be make it easier to come in and move into an existing lot, an existing area, make their codes beneficial for that rather than going out to the desert and having a new neighborhood. Because right now, in the past, it's easier just to go out and have new virgin desert and grade it and put a new neighborhood in because it's too hard to go in for the infill. So what we're trying to do is change our codes where it's easier to come in and use our existing infrastructure. That way it's better for the taxpayer because we already have existing infrastructure, and then it's also better for the air pollution and the stormwater pollution. So I'm not going to go through all the benefits of green infrastructure, but they're all there. And I'm not going to talk about that either. But these are all what we talked about yesterday. It was permeable paving. These are all the things that you can do. So Phoenix has all these different departments. The problem we have with changing our code is you can't do a curb cut. In Tucson, they said they did the curb cut, illegally, but now it's legal. In Phoenix, you can't do it unless you get a permit and a waiver. So typically, waivers, you can go and you can appeal to our planning department, and you can do like curb cuts, you can do corings, you can do things like that, but it takes more time. And developers, time is money. So they don't want to go through the extra time. They don't want to have an extra public hearing. So they won't do it. So what we're trying to do is change our code where it makes it very easy to get this stuff done. But changing that code is not that easy because you have real obstacles. For example, our tree canopy, our garbage trucks, we have automatic pickup for our garbage trucks, but it goes 16 feet in the air, the actual garbage container. So they want all trees to be cut 18 feet. So when you plant a young tree in the right-of-way, and when they come and trim it to 18 feet, it's basically, there's no tree left. It's half a tree, and the trees die. Typically, our trees in our right-of-way live about 6 to 7 years. So you plant the tree, you never get a full canopy, and then it dies or it blows over. So there's issues with that. Our water lines, our water department, our public works department, that's a huge multi-billion-dollar asset. They don't want trees planted within 10 feet of the water line because they think that the roots are going to destroy the infrastructure. So I've been at this, we've been working with them for quite a long time, but we're saying other cities do it around the country. So we're doing case studies right now saying it can be done. So we're actually doing it right now. We're trying to look at root guards. You can put root guards. You can put different trees. You can do different with your compaction. There's different technical ways to do it so to make the people that are managing the infrastructure feel comfortable. And the whole argument about engineers talking to engineers, that's really what it is. You really have to get the technical specs done, and it has to be proven somewhere else before they're going to accept you planting a tree next to their water lines. Because water is important, and when you have water lines leak, we have big, geysers out in our street, and we have to constantly repair the water line. So, so that's something we're working on. But you can see the structure; it's very complex. There's a lot of the different departments. What does it say here? So yeah, so the barriers I was talking about. One thing we do, all new construction though, for all new development and all new things, our code says you have to contain 100% of your water on site. So all new development, you have to contain the water on site, which should encourage green infrastructure. Because right now, what they do, developers, they take part of their lot and they make a huge retention pond. That retention pond is not usable, really. I mean, it's a retention pond. You can't put a building there. You can't really use it. So what we've been trying to encourage is developers to use pervious pavement or things like that, where you can actually get credit for water infiltrating through your parking lot. But now the technical part of that is our city code people don't like that because they said, well, in the desert, it will clog with dust. And then it will start flooding. And once it starts flooding, everyone turns to the city to handle the problem. So that's still, the whole thing about green infrastructure, you need to have the technical data to say, hey, it's okay to put pervious pavers in there. They will work. So we're trying to work with the universities and do research to show that it does work. So it's a long process to change a culture. Phoenix has 14,000 people, 28 different departments. I mean, working, staff people. It's a huge organization. So it's like moving an aircraft carrier to this right thing. But so the perception of Phoenix is, we already contain all water on site. That is green infrastructure. It's not exactly true. They do contain it on site, but it'd be nice to use it to grow trees and plants to get all the benefits that we talked about. Another barrier we have is you talk about rain barrels and having these gardens. It rains in Phoenix. We get about 5 to 7 inches of rain a year, and usually that's in like 3 rainstorms. We've actually had 3 rainstorms in August that exceeded our 500-year rain events. So we've had more rain in the last month than we've had in 3 previous years. So to put the infrastructure in for rain barrels and all that stuff you heard yesterday, it rains maybe 4 or 5 times a year. The payback is going to be difficult. So that's a hard sell for developers. It's a hard sell for the city people writing the code saying, is that really worth it? Because we have limited dollars. So what we would do, we want to get the bang for the buck. And I'm not sure if that's proven in Phoenix yet, And so we're still working on it. So we got an EPA grant a couple years ago, and we went through all of our code. And it's a lot of code, hundreds and hundreds of pages. And what we looked for were barriers where you're just not allowed to do it. For example, planting a tree above a water line, or omissions where it just makes it, you can do it, but it takes a long time to go through waivers. So what we're trying to do, we have a whole matrix of these codes. We're having a working group to say, how can we change this to make it better? We're actually getting the real problems, the water line's a real problem, power lines, signs, planting trees in the right-of-way, you can't block the signs, you know, because and I'm not sure how it is in Mexico, but every time someone gets an accident in Phoenix, the city gets sued because if a tree blocks the sign, it says crosswalk or this is the speed limit, and it's blocked, and that's a reason to sue this, you know, the government. So there's real issues to deal with, and we're trying to figure out what type of trees to plant so you don't you know, block the signs, or what type of trees to plant underneath the power lines, things like that. So that's the thing we're working through. And I'm actually supposed to talk about air pollution, so eventually I'll get there. Let me see. So I'm just going to go through very quickly, but we are making progress. You know, one thing I said about the vacant lots, that's a university downtown. We made pretty good demonstration projects. We're showing people it can work. One thing about the vacant lots have no trees on them. They're not taken care of. They're just vacant lots. You look at them when you see them. Here was a vacant lot, and we made it into a park. It's going to be 75% canopy cover. That's a huge benefit. And it's a park for the ASU students, Arizona State University. And there's no parking, so we just made it right downtown. It's a beautiful park to have movies there. But that's one way you can increase your canopy by all new development when all these vacant lots require them to put trees, require them, even in parking lots, every like fourth stall, you have to have a tree. So that's what we're trying to work on. Okay, the air pollution, they cover the air pollution pretty well. But in Phoenix, we don't have a problem with the nitrogen or the NO2 or the sulfur or lead. Our main problem is ozone, because we have so many vehicles, and dust. And we have major problems with dust. And it's the PM10, the coarse particles, and the fine soot dust. And unfortunately, we have problems with all of those in 3 different parts of the year. So all year long, we have a problem with something. We have the largest monitoring network in the country. We have 24 monitors around. They don't all monitor everything, but 18 of them monitors dust, which is a really hassle for us because any one of those monitors that fail, the whole region fails. So we've been spending lots of time and money, it seems like forever, trying to handle this situation. If we grow, if we double in size, you know, what's that going to mean? And that's why you really want to think about that green infrastructure now and infill now. All right, so we have some good news. Our ozone levels have been going down every year. Every year they go down. Well, the trend is down. How about that? So the downward trend. The one thing about EPA is every 5 years they're required to do studies on health. So we made the standard, you know, back in the 90s, but then as more science comes in, they find out that ozone does cause more of a health problem, so they lower the standard. So we're getting close to this current standard today, but unfortunately that new study came out again, and I think the EPA is going to lower the standard again because it's based on new science. So the trend is that we're getting better and better and cleaner air. The problem is we're never actually in attainment because the standards keep getting lower because we have more and more science that say it really does cause a major problem. So it's a real challenge. And ozone, the way we reduce ozone is really almost the federal government. They have cleaner burning fuel, cleaner, more efficient cars. We do a lot of stuff with travel reduction programs and stuff, but there's nothing that the city really actually does so much. It's more of a federal. PM 2.5 is that. So ozone is a problem in the summer. And, you know, we have that hot summer, those cars on the road as an ozone problem. PM 2.5 is mainly caused in November, December. And the reason, I don't know if you guys can guess it or not, but it's fireplaces and open fire pits. And it's actually the Hispanic culture that does that in South Phoenix. Thanksgiving and Christmas, everyone has like big parties, and it's smoke everywhere, and it's the fireplace going, and we exceed every 3 days a year. We always exceed Thanksgiving, Christmas, and New Year's Eve. And that is enough to make us fail the thing. So the sad thing about all that smoke, in the winter we have an inversion, so the smoke doesn't really go anywhere. It stays low. Our emergency rooms fill up with kids and people with respiratory problems. I mean, if we have records every year, you know they're going to have these asthma attacks. So it's a sad thing. So we're trying to get the word out with outreach saying, hey, don't burn. And it's illegal to burn a fire during a no burn day, but I mean, you can't really bang on people on Christmas stores saying, hey, put out your fireplace. It doesn't work too well, especially when you have millions of people to do banging on the doors. So we've been doing outreach, and what we're trying to get the messages out is, you know, your neighbor, you know, you're hurting your neighbor, you're hurting your children, because they will go to the emergency room when you have smoke all around 1.5 million people. You're going to have a lot of people with health problems. So really that's an outreach thing right now we're trying to do. We do have no burn days. We broadcast it. We make lots of, but people are going to burn on Christmas. PM10 is another problem. And we just got good news on that. The EPA approved our plan, so we finally made attainment after, I think, 2 decades. We are going to be in attainment for PM10. These are the dust. You can see the levels of dust. What we have now, the EPA came up with the rule exceptional events. So when you have these big dust storms, they don't count them because they say we spent millions. Phoenix alone, the city alone, spent about $24 million. Unfortunately, what we do is we pave. So we're paving roads, paving parking lots, having street sweepers, which is the opposite of what we really should be doing for stormwater. So, you know, that's the thing about looking at the whole picture. How can we help stormwater, help air pollution? And that's probably what the green infrastructure comes in, because you really can do it, but you just got to coordinate that. That's our PM10. We're getting lower and lower. We're much better now at PM10. And PM10 is a problem in the spring when it gets very windy. So in the spring, we get PM10. Summer, we get the ozone. And during the holidays, we have the 2.5. It's something, we spread it around. So if you want to visit Phoenix, you can pick somewhere in between there. Yeah, and we've met the standard. So, okay, now that's what we're fighting against right there. And that's what convinced the EPA to let us get into standard. Because before we had to prove that dust storm, we had to go through all of our 24 monitors and prove that really was the cause of the dust. And so one picture, it was on CNN News, it was on, like saying, well, yeah, I don't think a street sweeper is going to help that too much, you know. And that comes all the way from Tucson all the way out. It's I don't know if you guys are experiencing that, but that is climate change. We've never seen that before. It happened like a couple years ago. Now we seem to get them every year. Look at that. It looks like a nuclear attack or something. When you watch that come in, it's sort of scary. You know, it's like, wow, it's coming in. So now we have all these alerts to get off the road, because if you're on a car when that comes through, it's very dangerous. You can't see. So it's pretty rough. But it's not like that all the time. Phoenix is a good place to visit. This is not a Chamber of Commerce presentation. And now it's going to be on YouTube. You guys are going to get me into trouble. All right, so urban forest. What's urban forest? I think everyone knows. And I can't even read that because I don't have my glasses on, and I feel like she don't know what it says. But it's trees in the city. It's doing a benefit. We don't grow urban forest for firewood. You know, we grow it for the benefit of the tree. And that's the problem with urban forest. You know, I don't know how healthy that tree is. That tree wants to be healthy, and it wants to live, but, you know, you have the power lines. We probably should have never planted a tree there. We probably should have planted a tree that only grew to maybe 15 feet. And we don't even cut them for trucks like that. That's actually, the big trucks go by, and it does it itself. Because initially I thought that we were cutting it. I was like, man, that's crazy. But no, we don't do that. So that's why you need to really plan when you plant a tree. So what we did is in 2010, we said we need to really do something with our urban forest. So we came up with, we have an arborist who should be doing this presentation, but he was not available. That's why I was second choice. Even in Phoenix, I was second choice. So the master plan, we have a tree and shade master plan. Our arborist came up with we need to figure out how to grow this thing. It's not going to happen by itself. So the plan basically, I don't know if you can read what it says, but it's outreach. It has an outreach component. It has a component about doing inventories and figuring out what's out there, because like what they said earlier, if you don't know what's there, you can't track it and you can't improve it. And the third thing is trying to change city code to make it work. Yeah, it's a problem. I should wear glasses periodically, so I can't really read my own slides. But the 4 characteristics, you can see them there. They are part of public and private. Phoenix we've just done an inventory, and we have 3.2 million trees in Phoenix. Does that sound like a lot? We own, in the city of Phoenix right-of-ways, 92,000. So, you know, when we're pushing trees and trees, it's that 92,000 we're pushing. It's even less. It's less than the percentage that was cited earlier. So we really need to have private people plant the trees. All right, so now what the argument we're trying to do in Phoenix is, you know, you have the infrastructure for the piping. You have the infrastructure for the streets, and the streets department, they'll protect that with their life. The piping, you know, the water people will protect that. But we call it green infrastructure. We call it urban forest. But no one really thinks of it as infrastructure. No one really thinks of it as a benefit, because even when we look at our budget, we have a $3.5 billion budget in Phoenix. there's not a single line item for planting trees. There's like parks, maintenance. You got to go and it's like, where is the tree budget? There's no tree budget. So, but if you look at, pipe repair or road repair, that's hundreds of millions of dollars. So we know that's the infrastructure. We know we want to protect it because there's value. People drive on it, there's value. People flush the toilets, there's value. What we're trying to do with this master plan is like do the outreach to say there's value in these trees. It is an infrastructure, and start calling it infrastructure. That's our infrastructure, and let's put budget items in there to do it. So every dollar, that was a study done like in 2002, every dollar we put into trees, we think we get $2.2 back. I mean, why not plant trees? You're making money on property values and health and everything else. All right, now this is a great table, and I did bring a big copy of that. I almost bought one. All right, so this we had a study with the U.S. Forest Service, and they used Dr. Nowak's actually iTree software, and they work with Phoenix, El Paso, Las Cruces, and Albuquerque. And so what the Forest Service is trying to do is show the benefit regarding air. Because everyone, I think the EPA has done a good job with the green infrastructure and stormwater. It helps. But so they're trying to make the connection really to help cities out, because once we make the connection that it really does help air, maybe we'll get budgets, maybe it will be more valued. So just looking at this, the pollution removal, I don't know if you can see that, it's probably small print there, but we have 3.2 million trees according to this survey. Pollution removal, they say 1,800 tons a year of pollution removal in Phoenix, and that was based on our 24 air monitors. So we actually got the monitoring data and sent it to the U.S. Forest Service, and they plugged it into the model, which that's a benefit of $7.8 million a year just for pollution removal. And then they did it for energy savings. It's $23 million a year for energy savings. So if you start adding that in, and our replacement value, this is what really blows me away. At $1,200 a tree, to replace our forest, urban forest, is $4.32 billion. So that's a huge infrastructure. We have over a $4 billion infrastructure of trees. Once you know that, then maybe the people that actually are making decisions and writing code will actually try to protect the trees and actually try to invest in the trees, because you have a $4 billion infrastructure, and it pays benefits every year. So this study was comparing Phoenix, El Paso, Las Cruces, and Albuquerque, just because the Southwest is so different from the East Coast and California, and a lot of times, and you guys have the same environment, we always hear things from the wet environments or the East Coast of USA, and it doesn't really apply necessarily for Arizona or New Mexico. So that's why they're trying to do more specific studies in Phoenix, let's say, just so it can help us make decisions. Our canopy study we have is almost exactly, it's funny, we have about a 10 to 12% canopy, and that's the average, which we don't like that. We want to be above average. So we have a goal to be 25% canopy coverage in Phoenix. That's what the plan says. So the part one of the goal was to do the outreach, to do the inventory, to see what's there, track it, study it, make the argument that it's worth something, and then try to put plans in place to start increasing that goal. And part of the goal will be all new development has to plant trees, all those vacant lots, when that 1.5 million people move in, we'll have to plant trees, and hopefully that'll help. I think 25% is very aggressive. Well, I don't know if we'll ever get there, but at least we have something to strive for. Let's see where we are here. Oh, there we go. Okay, urban heat island effect. One thing about living in Phoenix, it can be hot, real hot. So we actually got ASU to do a study, and one thing, and this is one thing I work with them, I say, it'd be nice to actually sell it to the public what a tree canopy can do for you in terms of your everyday life, because a lot of times property values or health, people don't really care, but it's like, what does it do for temperature? So we studied it at a 0% canopy, a 10% and a 25% canopy, and they did 58 different model runs, and they went out and measured temperatures. They came up with, if you have a neighborhood with no canopy at all, and then you increase it 25%, it goes up 7.9 degrees, it's cooler, 7.9 degrees cooler in the neighborhood, not just under the shade. And they looked at under the shade, it's like up to 27 degrees cooler. So if you have a gravel yard, which Phoenix usually typically has, and you're standing in the sun, it's 27 degrees hotter than if you're standing in the shade. That's huge. It's pretty significant. So we also looked at from a 10% where we are today to a 25%, that would increase, that would cool off the neighborhood by 4 degrees Fahrenheit. So that's pretty significant. This doesn't even look at the energy savings. I know we talked about using water, and I wanted to do that in the study, but it's so complicated because with less energy use, then they use less water at the power plants. So maybe we're using water here in the city, but then we're using less to generate electricity. So it's trade-offs. I think we have to do some serious studies to see what are all those trade-offs, but I think it's very complicated. I think it'd be, you have a lot of variables in there, so I'm not sure how that would work. So one thing out of this study that came in is like the value of trees really is the shade in Phoenix. Not talking about all the health, but just in terms of livability and walkability, it's the shade. So one thing we do is we plant trees in the middle of our roads. We have medians because they're so pretty. You know, you have nice trees, but it costs money to trim them, and no one walks in the middle of the road. So one thing this study said is maybe if you really want to make your city walkable and more hospitable, don't plant the trees in the middle of the road. Maybe plant little shrubs, plant the trees on the sidewalks, and plus the added benefit of trapping, I didn't even think about that, trapping the contaminants in. You probably want to have the trees off where the sidewalks are, where the bus stops are, where the bicycle paths are. So we're looking at our whole thing. We have a bunch of trees down the middle of the road. Repairs a lot. You have to shut down lanes to trim them. It's just no one walks there. So you can actually just do things smarter, maybe even have the same canopy. You just put them in the right place, and they'll do you a lot better. That's the valuation of trees at different parks. They went through every park and they said, hey, this is the value of trees at a certain park. And we have some beautiful parks. I'm going to go through pretty quickly. That's one of our parks. Beautiful tree. You would never think, if you've never been to Phoenix and you're thinking, you know, all cactus, we have trees like that, and we have a lot of palm trees too. That's Central Avenue. That's been around for like 100 years, and there's a canal there. And every time I drive home, I drive along Central. People are walking their dogs, and even in the summertime, because it's probably 27 degrees cooler there than out in the sun. You know, it's very nice. So that shade does help, and those trees survive. They look fine. That's our court building, and City Hall is right behind it. That's just a nice place. I'll go down in the summer and sit, and it's not too bad. And there's our cactus. That's how people think of when they think of Phoenix, that. And that's in our preserves. So the 3 conclusions came up with, and I remember never put white on light blue. So one thing is they should be considered, green infrastructure in our urban forest should not just be considered, you know, the livability and the coolness, but it also should be the whole picture of stormwater mitigation, air pollution mitigation, the livability of a city. The second thing I was thinking about is the return on investment. Every dollar we spend, we get 2 point something back. So taxpayers and council members and mayors, you know, you're getting return on this money. You're not just throwing it away. And the third thing is, once we actually make the argument that this is infrastructure, it's valued, we probably should value it just like we value our roads, value our stormwater pipes and everything else, because once they have that value, they'll put budget items to protect it and to grow it, and then it'll be part of your everyday, you know, city government work, protecting our infrastructure. You would not let roads fall apart, and you wouldn't let your piping fall apart. Let's not let the trees fall apart. All right, well, thank you.